The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. The kind of quiet that felt earned after a long day. My name is Clara. And at 35, I'd spent years carving out this small corner of the world for myself, a modest 2-bedroom home in a sleepy suburb. With a garden I tended like it was my child, and a living room where I could curl up with a book and forget the chaos of the world outside. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen throw pillow carried the weight of my effort. My late nights at the office, my sacrifices. This was my sanctuary. That night, though, something felt off. The porch light was out, which was strange. I always left it on. I fumbled with my keys, my breath catching as I noticed the front door slightly ajar. My heart thudded. I pushed it open, expecting darkness. But instead, I was hit with a wall of sound-pounding music. Laughter. The clink of bottles. The air reeked of beer and sweat. My living room was a sea of strangers, their faces blurred under dim lights. Bodies pressed together, dancing, shouting, spilling drinks on my hardwood floors. My hardwood floors. The ones I'd saved for 2 years to install. I stood frozen, my purse slipping from my shoulder. A guy in a backward cap bumped into me, sloshing beer onto my blouse. "Yo, chill. It's a party," he slurred, stumbling past. My eyes darted around, searching for an explanation. And that's when I saw him, brother. Ethan, 24, wild-haired and grinning, holding court in the middle of my living room like he owned the place. He was tossing back a shot, his arms slung around some girl I'd never seen before, his laughter cutting through the noise like a blade. "Ethan," I shouted, my voice barely audible over the music. He didn't hear me or didn't want to. I pushed through the crowd, my anger building with every step, every crushed chip underfoot, every smear of something sticky on my walls. When I reached him, I grabbed his arm, yanking him away from the girl. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" His grin faltered, but only for a second. "Clara. Yo. Relax. It's just a little party. You're always so uptight." His breath smelled like whiskey, his eyes glassy. He was drunk, maybe more than drunk. The girl giggled, swaying against him, and I felt my stomach churn. "This is my house. Ethan. How did you even get in?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He shrugged, like it was nothing, like breaking into my home was just another Tuesday. "I've got a key. Remember? You gave me one ages ago." I hadn't given him a key. Not in years. Not since he'd borrowed my car without asking and totaled it. Not since I'd set boundaries. Told him I needed space from his chaos. He must have kept a copy from back when we were closer. Back when I still believed I could save him from himself. "Get these people out," I said, my voice low, trembling with rage. "Now." He laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Come on, Clara. Live a little. You're acting like mom and dad, all serious and boring. Just join us." I didn't join them. I stood there, watching as my Hamimi sanctuary was trashed by strangers who didn't care, led by a brother who cared even less. I felt something snap inside me, a thread I'd been holding onto for years, frayed by every excuse I'd made for him, every time I'd cleaned up his messes. I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking, and dialed 911. "Clara, what the fuck?" Ethan's eyes widened as he saw me lift the phone to my ear. "You're calling the cops. On me. Your own brother. You broke into my house," I said, my voice steady now, cold. "You don't get to do this anymore." The operator picked up, and I started explaining trespassing, property damage, a party out of control. Ethan stared at me, his face a mix of shock and betrayal. But I didn't look away. Not this time. The crowd around us started to thin as people sensed trouble, grabbing their jackets and slipping out the door. By the time the police arrived, the house was quieter, but the damage was done: broken furniture, stains on the carpet, a shattered picture frame on the floor, the photo of me and Ethan as kids crumpled inside. The officers were kind but firm, taking statements, escorting the last stragglers out. Ethan tried to charm them, playing the "it's just a misunderstanding" card, but they weren't buying it. They handcuffed him, his wrists behind his back, and I watched as they led him to the patrol car. His eyes met mine through the window, and for a moment, I saw the boy he used to bay me little brother, the one who'd followed me around with a gap-toothed grin, begging me to read him stories. But that boy was gone, buried under years of bad choices and broken promises. When the police left, I sat on my couch, surrounded by the wreckage of my home, and cried. Not just for the mess, but for everything: Ethan, me, the family we used to be. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from my mom. "Clara, he's your brother. You shouldn't have called the police. Family doesn't do that." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my own heartbeat, pounding like a drum in my chest. The house smelled like stale beer and regret. I dragged myself out of bed, my body heavy with exhaustion, and surveyed the damage in the harsh light of day. The living room was a battlefield: couch cushions torn, a lamp tipped over, mysterious stains on the walls. My kitchen wasn't much better: empty bottles lined the counter, and someone had spilled what looked like red wine across my white cabinets. I wanted to scream, but my throat was too raw from crying. I started cleaning, because what else could I do? I scrubbed the floors, hauled trash bags to the curb, and tried to ignore the ache in my chest. Every stain, every scratch felt like a personal attack, a reminder of Ethan's disregard. My phone buzzed again, another text from Mom. "He's at the station. You need to go get him. Clara. He's family." Family. The word felt like a weight, pressing down on me. I'd spent my life trying to hold our family together, patching the cracks Ethan left behind. When he was 16 and got caught shoplifting, I bailed him out. When he dropped out of college and needed a place to crash, I gave him my couch. When he overdosed at 21, I sat by his hospital bed, holding his hand while our parents argued about whose fault it was. I'd always been the fixer, the one who made excuses for him, who believed he'd change. But last night, something had shifted. I was done. I drove to the police station, not because Mom asked, but because I needed to see Ethan, to look him in the eye and figure out if there was anything left to salvage. The station was cold, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with the smell of coffee and disinfectant. Ethan was waiting in a holding area, his hands no longer cuffed, but his face pale, his eyes bloodshot. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of the night had stripped away his bravado. "Clara," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it'd get that bad." "You didn't think?" I repeated, my voice flat. "You broke into my house. Ethan. You threw a party with strangers in my home. You didn't think about me at all." He looked down, his fingers twisting together. I needed to blow off some steam. Things have been rough. You know. I didn't mean to hurt you." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But I'd heard those words before. Too many times. "You always say that," I said. "And then you do it again. You crash my car. You take my money. You disappear for months. And now this. When does it stop?" He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. An officer approached, explaining that Ethan was being charged with trespassing and property damage. But since it was my house, I could drop the charges. I felt Ethan's eyes on me, pleading, but I couldn't meet them. I need time, I told the officer. I'll let you know. Back home, I kept cleaning, trying to erase the evidence of the night before. But the damage wasn't just physical. It was in the memories that flooded back Ethan as a kid, chasing fireflies in our backyard. Ethan at 15, sneaking out to meet friends. Ethan at 20, promising he'd get clean. I'd spent so long hoping he'd find his way. But hope was a heavy thing, and I was tired of carrying it. My phone rang that evening. It was Dad this time. "Clara, you've got to let this go," he said, his voice gruff but soft, the way it always was when he was trying to mediate. "Ethan's got problems, but he's your brother. Family sticks together." "Does family break into your house?" I snapped. "Does family destroy everything you've worked for?" He sighed. "He's struggling, Clara. He needs help, not jail." I hung up, my hands trembling. I didn't know what Ethan needed anymore, but I knew what I needed: boundaries, peace, a chance to live without his chaos spilling into my life. I sat on the couch, staring at the shattered picture frame I hadn't yet thrown away. In the photo, Ethan and I were kids, smiling at the camera, our arms around each other. I wondered if we could ever find our way back to that. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, insurance claims, and repair estimates. The cost of fixing my house was staggering: thousands of dollars for new floors, furniture, and paint. Every quote felt like a punch to the gut, a reminder of Ethan's recklessness. I hadn't decided whether to press charges, and the weight of that choice hung over me like a storm cloud. Part of me wanted to punish him, to make him feel the consequences of his actions. But another part, the part that remembered him as my little brother, the one who'd once drawn me lopsided hearts on construction paper, wanted to give him another chance. I went to see Mom and Dad, hoping for clarity. Their house was the same as always, cluttered with knickknacks and the faint smell of Mom's lavender candles. They sat me down at the kitchen table, their faces lined with worry. "Clara, you can't do this to him," Mom said, her hands clasped tightly around a mug of tea. "He's your brother. If you press charges, it'll ruin his life." "His life is already a mess," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "He's been spiraling for years, and you both keep pretending it's not happening. He needs help, not coddling." Dad frowned, his fingers tapping the table. "He's trying, Clara. He's got a new job lined up, and he's talking about going back to school. You calling the police doesn't help him get better." I stared at them, incredulous. A new job, school. He's been saying that for years, and nothing changes. He broke into my house, Dad. He destroyed it. And you're telling me to just forgive him? Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Family doesn't give up on each other," she said softly. "You're all he's got." I left their house feeling more lost than ever. They weren't wrong. Ethan was family, and family was supposed to stick together. But where was the line? How much was I supposed to sacrifice for someone who kept hurting me? I drove home, my mind churning, and found a letter in my mailbox. It was from Ethan, scrawled in his messy handwriting. "Clara," it read, "I know I fucked up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. I just wanted to feel something good for once. You know, life's been hard, and I thought a party would help. I know that's stupid. I'll pay you back for the damage. I swear. Please don't press charges. I'm trying to get better. Love, Ethan." I read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper. It was the same story he always told. Sorry. Trying. Better. But there was something in the way he wrote, please, that made me pause. It felt desperate, like a crack in his usual bravado. I sat on my porch, the letter in my hands, and thought about the Ethan I used to know. The one who'd climb into my bed during thunderstorms, scared but pretending he wasn't. The one who'd promised to be my best friend forever when I left for college. Where had that Ethan gone? I called my best friend, Sarah, needing someone who'd listen without judgment. She came over, bringing coffee and her no-nonsense attitude. Clara, you've been cleaning up Ethan's messes your whole life, she said, sitting across from me on my battered couch. You don't owe him your forgiveness. You owe yourself peace. Her words hit hard. I'd spent so long trying to be the good sister, the good daughter, that I'd forgotten what I owed myself. But letting go of Ethan felt like letting go of a piece of my heart. I didn't know if I was ready for that. That night, I dreamed of the old Ethan, the one who'd laughed with me under the stars, who'd promised we'd always have each other. When I woke, my pillow was wet with tears, and I knew I had to make a choice not just for Ethan, but for me. The decision weighed on me for days. I kept Ethan's letter on my kitchen counter, rereading it until the words blurred together. Part of me wanted to believe he was sincere, that this time he'd follow through on his promises. But the other part, the part that had seen him lie, disappear, and hurt everyone around him, knew better. I called the police station and told them I wasn't ready to drop the charges yet. I needed to see Ethan again, to know if there was any hope left. I visited him at the county jail, a gray, imposing building that made my skin crawl. He was in a visitation room, separated from me by a glass partition. He looked worse than before, paler, thinner, his eyes sunken. But when he saw me, he smiled. That same crooked smile that used to charm everyone. Clara, he said through the phone. You came. I'm not here to bail you out, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I'm here to understand why. Why my house? Ethan, why do you keep doing this? His smile faded. He leaned forward, his forehead almost touching the glass. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I feel like I'm drowning. Clara. All the time. And when I'm high or drunk or surrounded by people, it's like I can breathe for a second. I know it's messed up. I know I hurt you. His words were raw, unguarded, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was seeing the real Ethan, not the reckless, defiant version, but the scared, broken one. You can't keep doing this, I said. Not to me. Not to Mom and Dad. Not to yourself. You need help. Ethan. Real help. I know, he said, his voice cracking. I want to try. I do. But I don't know how. I told him about rehab programs, about therapy, about the resources I'd looked up after his overdose years ago. He listened, nodding, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the fear of failing, of trying and not being enough. I'll think about it, he said finally. But Clara, please don't let them lock me up. I can't do jail. I didn't promise anything. I couldn't. When I left, my heart was heavy, torn between love and self-preservation. I spent the next few days researching, calling rehab centers, trying to find a place that could take him. I didn't tell Mom and Dad. They'd only tell me to let it go, to forgive him without consequences. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Forgiveness felt like surrender, like letting him hurt me again. Sarah came over again, this time with a bottle of wine and a stack of takeout menus. You're doing too much, she said as we sat on my porch, the evening air cool against my skin. You're trying to save him, but you can't. He has to save himself. I know, I said, staring at the stars. But he's my brother. If I give up on him, who's left? She didn't answer, just squeezed my hand. We sat in silence, the weight of her words settling over me. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to fix Ethan, the nights I'd lain awake worrying, the money I'd lent him that I'd never see again. I thought about my house, my sanctuary, now scarred by his chaos. And I realized something. Loving Ethan didn't mean I had to let him destroy me. I decided to meet with a lawyer, someone who could help me navigate the charges against Ethan. I wanted him to face consequences, but I also wanted him to have a chance at redemption. Maybe there was a way to balance justice and mercy. Maybe I could find it. The lawyer's office was small but tidy, with stacks of files neatly arranged on a wooden desk. She was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor that put me at ease. I explained everything: Ethan's break-in, the party, the damage, our history. She listened without interrupting, jotting notes, her pen scratching softly against the paper. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "You have options, Clara. You can press charges, and he'll likely face probation or community service, given his record. Or you can drop the charges and push for court-mandated rehab. It's not a guarantee, but it's a way to get him help while still holding him accountable." I nodded, my mind racing. Rehab sounded like a lifeline, but it also felt like another gamble on Ethan's promises. What if he doesn't follow through? I asked. What if he just keeps doing this? Then you set boundaries, she said firmly. You protect yourself. You can love your brother without letting him hurt you. Her words echoed Sarah's, and I felt a clarity I hadn't in weeks. I wanted Ethan to get better, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace for his redemption. I told the lawyer I'd think about it, and she gave me a list of rehab programs that worked with the court system. I left her office feeling lighter, like I'd taken a step towards something, though I wasn't sure what. That evening, I went to Mom and Dad's again. I needed them to understand, to stop seeing me as the bad guy for calling the police. They were in the living room, Mom knitting, Dad watching the news. I sat across from them, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I'm not dropping the charges, I said, my voice steady. But I'm trying to get Ethan into rehab. Court mandated. It's the only way he'll take it seriously. Mom's hand stilled, her needles clattering to the floor. Clara, you can't do this. He's your brother. I'm doing this because he's my brother, I said, my voice breaking. I love him, Mom, but I can't keep cleaning up his messes. He needs to face consequences, and he needs help. Real help, not just me bailing him out. Dad's face softened, but he didn't speak. Mom started crying, and I felt a pang of guilt, but I didn't back down. I'm not giving up on him, I said, but I'm done letting him hurt me. I left their house with a strange mix of relief and sorrow. For the first time, I'd stood up for myself without apologizing. But I also felt the weight of their disappointment, their unspoken belief that I was betraying Ethan. I drove home, the night stretching out before me, and thought about the future. Could Ethan change? Could I find a way to love him without losing myself? The next day, I called the lawyer and told her my decision. I'd press charges, but I'd push for rehab instead of jail time. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like the right balance: consequences for Ethan, protection for me, and a chance for him to get better. I didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. That night, I started repairing my house myself. I painted over the stains, patched the walls, and replaced the broken picture frame with a new Oni photo of me, alone, smiling at the camera. It wasn't about erasing Ethan. It was about reclaiming my space, my life. I fell asleep on the couch, the smell of fresh paint in the air, and dreamed of a future where I didn't have to choose between my brother and myself. Weeks passed, and the legal process moved slowly, like wading through mud. Ethan's court date was set, and I spent the time gathering repair receipts, documenting the damage, and working with the lawyer to ensure the rehab option was on the table. I didn't visit Ethan again, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed space to breathe, to focus on myself. My house was starting to look like mine again, the scars of that night fading under new paint and furniture. But the emotional scars were deeper, harder to mend. The day of the hearing arrived, and I sat in the courtroom, my hands trembling in my lap. Ethan was there, in a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, his eyes fixed on the floor. When he saw me, he gave a small nod, like an acknowledgement of something unspoken. The judge was stern but fair, outlining the charges: trespassing, property damage, public disturbance. My lawyer presented the case for rehab, arguing that Ethan's issues stemmed from addiction, not malice. I held my breath as the judge considered, her eyes scanning the room. In the end, she agreed to probation with mandatory rehab, a 6-month program at a facility I'd helped choose. Ethan would have to check in weekly, attend therapy, and stay clean. If he failed, he'd face jail time. I felt a strange mix of relief and fear as the gavel came down. It was what I'd wanted, but it also meant letting go of control, trusting Ethan to do the work. After the hearing, I met him outside the courtroom. He looked nervous, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Thanks, Clara," he said, his voice low, "for not giving up on me." I almost did, I admitted, my voice soft but honest. "I can't keep doing this. Ethan, this is your chance. Don't waste it." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw something like determination in his eyes. "I won't," he said. "I promise." I didn't believe promises anymore, but I nodded anyway. "I'll be here," I said, "but you have to show up for yourself." He hugged me, quick and awkward, before the officer led him away to start the process. I watched him go, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in years. I drove home, the radio off, the silence comforting. My house was waiting, my sanctuary, flawed but mine. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls, the furniture, the new picture frame. I thought about Ethan, about the boy he'd been and the man he might become. I thought about Mom and Dad, about their love for us both, even if it sometimes blinded them. And I thought about myself, about the woman I was becoming, one who could love her brother without losing herself. Months later, I got a letter from Ethan, written from the rehab center. It was short but steady, his handwriting neater than before. He was trying, he said. It was hard, but he was trying. He thanked me again, and this time, I believed he meant it. I wrote back, telling him I was proud, that I'd always be his sister, but that I was learning to be my own person too. I hung his letter on the fridge, next to the photo of me alone. It wasn't a promise of a perfect future, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough.